And then we're going to find you on the list. Here we go. There, you should be host now.
Okay, let's try to get this up and running. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for having me. I see we got a couple of people in the waiting room, and I have to let them in, right?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. I think they're in. I hope so. Okay. I'll have to keep an eye on things here. So again, thank you for having me. It's nice to see all my friends down at the River Prairie Group. And let me just kind of get going here. I got. Let me just see here. I want to get rid of some things that are okay. Hopefully this will work. Again, thank you. And I'm going to be talking about a trip that Sue, my wife, and I made in 2018 to Malawi, Africa, to do some volunteer conservation work. So it's a very unique way of traveling to some pretty interesting places. And the organization that we went through is called Biosphere Expedition. They have a website, and you can see all of the various trips that they sponsor. Now, essentially what they're doing is they seek out research projects generally. I think they're all wildlife research projects. And they work with the research scientists, and their role is to find volunteers like ourselves who can go to the site and do data gathering, whatever the tasks the scientists need done in order to free up the scientists to more evaluate the data and free them and free them up from doing the data gathering as well. And you'll see that as I go through the presentation. This is our third trip through Biosphere Expeditions. The first one was to Namibia, a life-changing experience. That one was, the topic on that trip was leopards. They were studying leopards and the role of predators in that area. We've also been to Germany to study wolves. Wolves have begun to enter back into Germany. And of course, people get panicky like they do in the West. Wolves are here, they're attacking our livestock, so we shoot them. Well, the research is there to gather the data and to educate the community that no, predators are an important part of the ecosystem. And then our latest one was to Malawi. I didn't know where Malawi was when Sue came in the room and said, "Have you seen the trip to Malawi?" And I'm thinking an island out in the Pacific. No, I learned some new geography, and we decided that this trip sounded very fascinating, so we signed up. Malawi is, in sort of the southern part of Africa. I'll be talking a little bit about the country as we get into this. But again, with Biosphere, they have projects all over the world. Because of the pandemic, pretty much was shut down in 2020, but they're starting to list projects once again. I think Malawi is back on the list. And these projects require no experience. Just essentially, you're in fairly good shape. In other words, you can walk 10 or 12 miles a day. That's probably the hardest thing, but also it's work. and I'll be describing that. But it's a fascinating experience. The Malawi Project, what they did was they assembled three teams. We were on team number 2, and each team spent the better part of 2 weeks working on the project. Then they left, and a new team came in, spent a couple weeks, and then another team followed up after that. Now, you do pay to be part of the project, and much of the money that they collect helps fund the research, but it also pays, for our expenses. And they include ground transportation, all the food, which is vegetarian, basic lodging, and depending on the project, there's different types of lodging, and you'll see what we experienced. They provide training and then the equipment that we might need. Now, some of the projects are actually ocean-based, and people are diving all day long and doing undersea work. So if you're a scuba diver, you'd find some fascinating projects there. The cost was relatively inexpensive. I mean, for 2 weeks in Africa, it was just over $3,000, but that didn't include airfare. And if all you do is go there, do the project, and come back, the entire trip is tax deductible if you itemize, because Biosphere is a nonprofit. Now, what we did was we went there and we extended the trip, but we were able to deduct the cost of the Malawi part of the trip when we did our taxes that year. So that further takes the cost down a little bit. So here's Malawi. It's a land-based country, fairly small. It's about half the size of the UK, but it borders a very large lake, Lake Malawi. And let me show you a little bit more about the country. The capital is Lilongwe, and I've circled that. And then where the project took place was the Waza Marsh Game Reserve. Now it's about an 8-hour drive from where we initially met the team. You can see there's this large lake, and it is about, surface-wise, it's about half the surface of Lake Michigan. But actually, there's more water in Lake Malawi than Lake Michigan because it's so deep. Sue and I, when we landed in Malawi, we first took a few days. We went over to Lake Malawi and we camped for a few days, did some snorkeling, and it's fresh water, but I think it's one of the higher concentration of freshwater species of fish. So it's pretty fascinating to snorkel and kayak at Lake Malawi. Then we went back to the capital Lilongwe and we met up with our team. Now, Malawi is like the second poorest country on earth. It's very dense for the size, 17 million people. You notice how young they are. Women, they're averaging close to 6 children, per woman, and you can see about half the population is child under 14 years old. They have a very big problem with AIDS, and as a result, a lot of orphans. You can see half the population is under the poverty line, and most of us have more money in our pocket right now than they earn in a year. So again, very, very poor. And if you look at their main export being tobacco, not much of an economy to be terribly proud of, but that's going to be very sustainable. That's where tourism can play in many African. Can you still hear me?
No, I'm not getting any
Can you-
picture at all.
We can hear you. I can hear you, but your voice
Can you
changed a
still hear
little
me?
bit.
No. Oh, goodness.
No, I can hear you. Peter, do you hear me?
All right. I have a.
Peter, can you hear me?
Battery 5. We can
We
hear
can hear
you.
you and see you. We can hear
Peter, we
you. and
can
see you
hear
fine.
you. I'm gonna.
I can hear you, but I cannot see a thing. This is Carolyn Finzer in Naperville.
Well, Carolyn, everybody else is seeing him. It's working fine. I
So
don't
what
know
am I
if
not doing right? I'm just hearing him, but what am I not doing right? I dialed the Chicago number. I emailed Jeffrey. I called you, Connie, for help. I realized we're 15 minutes into it.
You need to connect with a computer. You cannot see the screen if you're calling into the phone, which you seem to be doing, because I see your phone number there, 1630. So if you're calling with a regular phone line, you cannot see, you can only hear.
So I clicked the join the Zoom meeting and it turned blue and then nothing happened.
Carolyn, are you on a computer or a phone?
I'm looking at my computer screen and I chose, when I wasn't getting any kind of connection at all, I chose to go down and it said dial by your location. So I dialed the Chicago number and I had to then digitally put in my meeting ID and my passcode, which I did.
The computer didn't work and you ended up connecting with the phone. So you need to go back, and when you have to get the link to work, maybe your browser is blocking the pop-ups or something like that. But you need to connect through your computer. And once you connect to your computer, it asks you if you want to connect to computer audio, and you have to choose that. But there is nothing wrong. It's just that you really called into the number, and the only functionality there is that you can listen, but you can't see.
Well, I think I'll just listen. It's better than nothing, because I was ready to give up about 15 minutes ago. This was my one connection. I'm at least hearing a voice, but I'm not seeing any pictures at all. And I have an old Dell computer, and I don't have
Caroline,
a microphone.
We're going to go on with the program. Caroline, we're going to go on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everyone, that I'm.
That's okay. I'm hoping you'll enjoy listening to it.
I will. Thank you, Connie.
You bet. Okay. Peter, we can hear you.
Okay, well, I got a message that my mic turned off. So I'll keep an eye on that.
Good.
Okay, so as I mentioned, that in Africa, tourism is, for some countries, a leading economic driver for their economy. Malawi does not have much of a tourism industry. So the research we're doing up at the game reserve hopefully will start to open up some of these game preserves to tourism, and that way provide another revenue source for this country. Now, what you'll see in Malawi, if you were to travel, is this roadway that you see is a major highway going north-south. No cars. People walk along the highway, and if they're lucky, they have a bicycle. So again, poverty, they're very, very poor country. The homes are brick buildings, small buildings. I got someone else I have to admit, sorry, as the host here, there we go. Double duty here. The homes are simple brick buildings with thatched or metal roofs. There's no power. They cook over fires, so it's very smoky. There are outhouses, and for water, typically there's just simply I'm hearing some background. Typically, just a single pump that the whole community, the village uses, and that's how they get their water. But the people are just some of the most welcoming, wonderful, friendly people that you will meet. They're a beautiful, beautiful and handsome people. And the children are, you just want to scoop them up and take them home with you. They're the cutest and wonderful little people I've ever met. And they're just so curious and happy to see you. There's Sue, and they were so happy and curious. And as you go through, but there's so many children. But it was Sue. I think Sue took most of these photos here, and I think they're classics. And this next one is a favorite of ours. So again, just physically just beautiful people, and we so enjoyed being with them. So let me get to the project. So we all met in Lilongwe, which is the capital, and we boarded a small bus and drove for 8 hours up to the Vuaza Marsh Game Reserve. And you can see as we entered, it is a true research camp hosted by the Conservation Research Africa along with the Lilongwe Wildlife Trust. So legitimate researchers and scientists are there, and we arrived again to give them boots on the street, people that can go out and gather data. The marsh is about 1,000 square kilometers, so it's a pretty big area. No roads other than some sort of poor, dirt roads, very, very hard to get through the area. Those dots that you see on this map is where we eventually set up camera traps, and I'll be talking about that. Basically, they don't know what they have. We were there to study the nature and the patterns of biodiversity in the marsh. We were there to monitor the various species, and as I will go through, there were various methods that we used to observe and to monitor the species. Also, we wanted to measure species distribution and the abundance, and well as ultimately provide this information on the biodiversity to the researchers so that they can develop plans. I mean, this is an area Malawi would like to develop, hopefully for tourism. Now, our camp, which I'll be going over, is way down there in the bottom there, and we were next to a Lake Kazuni, which you'll see pictures of. So it was a pretty big piece of land. It would take us most of a day to get from one end to the other. So here we are arriving, and our team made up of about 12 volunteers. Sue and I were the only Americans. There was people from the UK. We had kind of a big German-Austrian contingent. Germany, Austria, Canada, the US, and the UK, all represented. Now, they use English throughout the project. So that was one of the conditions for volunteers, is that they had to be fluent in English, which proved to be fine for us. So upon arrival, and now what I'll do is I'll take you around the camp that was, we just have another person, I have to admit. Here we go. Now, our lodging were safari tents, safari camp. They were comfortable. If you're a camper, backpacker, you would look at this and say, this is pretty luxurious. And we were very comfortable. For the most part, there was one couple to a tent. And we had to really keep things under wraps. Baboons were wandering around and they would pick up anything you left. So we had to keep an eye on that and keep everything zipped up tight. 2 beds, again, comfortable and adequate. We didn't spend a lot of time in the tent other than sleeping because we spent long days out in the bush. This was our showers. And something I want to point out is you'll see that there were designated areas to walk, and they would keep those areas, even though the dirt swept, because we really had to be aware all the times of our surrounding. We need to keep an eye out for scorpions, for snakes. But also we had to keep an eye out for elephants, believe it or not. They could sneak up, and you, as big as they are, you might not notice them until they're just a little too close for comfort. But this was our shower, and these are bucket showers. You'd go get water, fill up the bucket, rinse off, and let the next person in. You'll notice that the mirror is covered with a sheet because the sun is so intense that the reflection off the mirror could actually start a fire and burn the shower down. Our water, we went into, there was a small adjacent village, and we went into the village and we would pump water into these containers, lug it back. This was almost a daily exercise. That's a lot of work, a lot of work. And that's where our water came from. And we would take those large containers, bring them to the shower, fill it up, have a shower, and move on. Again, the children were everywhere, and they were, again, adorable and fun to be with. We also had a couple of outhouses, what they called long drops. And you'd go in and you'd have to kind of look around, make sure you're alone, and take care of business and be on your way. We had one main, you might say, meeting lodge. This is where we all met for meals, for training, for doing our data work, for assembling our gear as we went out on our projects. It was powered by a solar panel and batteries, so we were able to charge our phones and run computers, as well as also they had some videos, and we would gather, and again, we would obtain our training. They would, every task that we did, and I'll be going through the various
Trying to
tasks.
figure out what they have so they can make it a tourism place.
And got a little bit of background
Diana, I'm
noise.
going to ask that you mute everybody who's not speaking, everybody whose name is not Peter. Would you mute your, and that way it'll work out nice. And we're going to have some questions in a little bit, so you can type your questions in the chat.
Sure, thank you. So we would gather in this meeting lodge, you might say, where, again, we had meals, our training, and we would do all of our prep work prior to going out to perform the various tasks that we signed up for that day. So you can see open air. That's where we had our meals as well. They had a couple of cooks. The food was quite good, vegetarian. There was a kitchen there as well. We didn't go hungry, but we worked up, had good appetites. The location of the camp was very close to the shores of Lake Kazuni. And I think that was the only water for miles around. So it attracted a lot of wildlife. And so it was a lot of fun just to kind of see what was gathering during the day. And we had to be careful. The wildlife in this area, the Vuazi Marsh, is truly wild, not used to people, unlike when you go on safari in other areas of Africa where they're used to seeing vehicles and people. Not that it isn't dangerous there as well, but they're a little more used to it. Here, the elephants were truly wild and as such, very dangerous. Same with hippos and most anything else that we encountered. So a lot of caution, but when we were in this kind of like this common area, we were safe, but we did not wander outside of the camp. Now, the tasks that we were there to do ranged, well, from monitoring large mammals, and I'll go through each one of these. But our typical day would be, and I'll show you a typical day's agenda. We'd get up early. We would perform one task in the morning, come back for lunch, take a couple hours off in the hottest part of the day, and then go out for a second task, and maybe even a third task if there was one that, like the bat trapping, that was done at night. Excuse me. The days were quite long. So you could see here's what we would wake up to. 5:30, we would have breakfast. 6 o'clock, we were off for the first task of the day. On that day, I was doing what was large mammal transect walking, and I'll explain what that is. And then in the afternoon, I was doing elephant observation. So that's what we did. And then dinner later on, and then there might be something after dinner, but for the most part, we just, after a 12-hour day, we went back and we're glad to, glad to go to bed. So I'm gonna kind of step through these various tasks that we were trained to do. Large mammal transects. This was simply to go out either on foot or by vehicle, and we would monitor the mammals that we encountered. And there was, each task had a certain protocol, and we had data sheets also that we would fill out. So there was a specific way of conducting these things. It wasn't just simply, oh, there's an elephant. We had to, in some cases, mark down information about the animal that we're seeing, the GPS coordinates, and again, depending on the project, there was certain information that we were asked to collect. So it was very disciplined. So, but we never knew what to expect once we took off in the morning, no matter what we were doing. In the vehicles, certainly it felt more safe, and we could move away from wildlife that we didn't want to get too close to. Here's some buffalo that certainly they get the right of way. On this particular one, I think that's an elephant down the road. And whenever we encountered an elephant, and I was amazed how they were so well hidden that very often we would come up upon an elephant before we realized, and then we'd have to very carefully back away, as I will show you. A hippo, same thing. They would just pop out of the bush, and they're pretty well camouflaged. So you sometimes wouldn't notice them until you're almost right upon them. And all these animals can be very, very dangerous. Now the walking transects was the other way we went out and monitored large mammals. And essentially what we did was we drove to a specific location, and then we walked for 5 kilometers in a straight line and just made note of the wildlife that we saw. So we'd be coming along, and I think in the distance there is some wildebeest, and we would make note of them, GPS coordinates, what they were doing, how many were there, etc. There's some kudu. There's impala, a yellow baboon, and of course, elephants. Now this one, this particular is where we were in a vehicle, and if we're driving down the road and we came across elephant, you could see there, we just slowly back up. Again, they're truly wild elephants. They're not familiar with us. They're not sure whether we're a threat. And so this was a fairly young elephant, and he was not going to let us pass by. We later identified him as an elephant that hadn't been identified, and so we were able to name him, and we did, Roadblock. And often if they have to change plans. Yep. And my mic's
Peter,
Okay.
we've lost you now.
Can you hear me?
Now we do.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, my mic, I don't know, goes to sleep. I got an external mic here and it seems to like to go to sleep. And first time I'm using it, maybe it'll last. Sometimes when we encountered an elephant, we might have to completely abandon what we were going out to do and take on another task. So again, very unpredictable. Another task that we did was Hippo Counts. This was done, well, on foot as well as driving. And we would just head out to the lake. And as the name implies, we were simply there to count hippo. Again, a very dangerous animal, especially if you catch yourself between the lake and let's say they're in the bush and they're coming out of the bush to go to the lake and we're between them and the lake, they may not appreciate it. So one of the things we had to do is always keep our eyes open at all times. And not only the wildlife, but even where we were stepping. In Africa, everything is out to get you, the plants, the insects, the animals. And so we had to watch. And if you stepped on like this thorn, it will go right through your boot and your foot. And it happened to one person. So again, always be aware. There's so much to be looking at, but at the same time, so much that we have to be aware of. So that when we encountered a group of hippos,
Hi.
not only were we there to count, but again, we had a data sheet and we filled out location and.
You don't need to come on it. It's just what you like. It's just a presentation.
Deanna, you need to mute.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Now, if you think counting hippos, they're so big, it's not hard to do. How many hippos do you see? And this was the challenge. So we would all line up and we would each try to count the hippos. I think there's maybe 12 or 13 there. And of course, they're in and out of the water. So we would, you know, there'd be like maybe 6 of us there. We would all count and then we'd kind of average it and say, okay, that's how many hippos were there. They're kind of fascinating to watch, but you don't get too close. And again, just you could spend all day just watching them. And there were babies and all shapes and sizes. Another project that we did, I see another person, okay, just admitted, was primate observation. One of the researchers was doing primate research, and this task involved sitting and watching a group of baboons just being baboons. again, there was a very specific protocol and a data sheet. In this case, you'd pair up with an individual, they would have a stopwatch, and over several minutes, we would simply watch a group or herd of, or troop of baboons and note their behavior. Like this might be noted as adult female eating. So we are looking at behaviors and noting all of that. And they could be very active, running around, but we would note all of the members, what they were all doing, and then we would stop the stopwatch, follow them a little bit, and then do another segment of noting their behavior. Another task was elephant observation. Here, we mostly did it at the meeting lodge because, again, we couldn't get too close to the elephant, and by using binoculars and telephoto lenses, we would observe and try to identify traits of the herd, as well as identify individual elephants. It would normally start out where you'd have a small herd and you could easily see young elephants, and we were able to categorize, you know, male, female, the young, and all of that. But before you knew it, here would come dozens more, and really making the observation difficult. And they would intermingle, and at that point, we couldn't really study the herd anymore, and we would shift to try to identify individual elephants. And you could see they would just keep coming and coming and coming. It was nice to see so many elephant. They're very healthy looking, another good thing. But to study an individual herd at this point was not possible. Now, to identify individual elephants, we would take pictures and then we would blow them up and we would analyze them. And I'll go through a quick little exercise. This was an elephant that we encountered on a different task. I think we were doing a hippo count in a vehicle, but we encountered an elephant. And so, okay, we're going to shift gears. We can't go any further. So why don't we do an elephant observation? And when we observed an individual elephant, we would try to identify certain characteristics, physical characteristics of that elephant. And what you'll see there is like this notch on one ear, maybe a bit of a broken tusk, and there were other notches on the other ear. Now, Sue took this photo, and then we went back and we sat down, and this is an example of a data sheet where we would start sketching the different characteristics and listing the different characteristics of the elephant. We also had a catalog, and we would thumb through the catalog and see if somebody else had already identified this elephant. In this case, the answer was no. So we got to name the elephant, and we named this elephant Nate after our oldest son. And actually, it was just 4 days after his birthday. So that was his birthday present. He has an elephant named after him. We also found 2 other elephants that had previously not been identified, and we named them after our 2 grandsons. So that's kind of neat. But again, you can see the information, the location, the age, the sex, all of the characteristics, because if they encounter this elephant again, they want to see how they're doing relative to when we observed the elephant as well. Now, another thing that we did, elephant dung analysis. Now, this may look pretty disgusting, but an elephant dung ball, it has no smell. It's very fibrous, but I didn't share my trail mix with Alex after this. The researchers are rather casual about some things, but as you can see, they would take the dung balls back, tear them apart, and it's just very fibrous. It's like, again, not messy or smelly. And we analyze what are the elephants eating. And we literally separate seeds from the rest of the dung and identify the seed, analyzing, are they eating? Is their diet changing? As it well could, if certain, it's drought, certain areas are being overeaten, you might say. So we want to see what their diet is doing, and that they're finding enough food and staying healthy. So again, all of this, it was cataloged. I mean, a lot of data we were gathering. Another interesting thing that we did was bat trapping. Now, this was more of a nighttime activity. We would set up nets. There was a large net as well as a smaller net to capture bats. Once they come out after the sun sets, it gets a little dark. You know, bats come out, start flying around, gathering, eating insect, and we would try to capture them, and they're quite fascinating and cute. Now, if you had agreed to participate in this, I think we had to get rabies shot ahead of the trip, so that in case you got bit, but there were no incidents, and there was protective gear. And the researchers, we captured a number of bats, and the researcher would take measurements, identify the species, etc. Again, they knew very, very little about the biodiversity in this area. So everything we were seeing, everything we were noting was pretty much new information. Something that Sue got into, which I think wasn't really part of the project officially, but there was an entomologist there, Karen. She's in the background with the sunglasses from Ireland. And she was helping on the project, but being an entomologist, she was also collecting insects and building up a collection. And I think it was the first collection of its type in Malawi, and it may be the most extensive at this point. And she did this pretty much on her own, begging and borrowing, whatever she could to build this collection. So Sue was very involved with this, helping her to catalog all of this. So again, all of this science is being done in many cases for the first time. So it's pretty fascinating. Another activity, again, we were quite busy, was setting up camera traps. This is where maybe 2 teams of us, we'd each grab, we had about 24 cameras, motion detection cameras. And we'd head off and spend all day setting up these cameras at specific locations that they asked us to. And when we set them up, we would have to clear the brush away, because even a blade of grass moving could set off the camera. And we didn't want to get back 1,000 pictures of nothing. And often that's what we got. A lot of things could trigger the camera. So we'd set them up, program them, and be on our way, and then come back after a few days, get the memory cards, bring them back to camp. And it was always kind of entertaining as we would gather around and start flipping through the pictures. 99 out of 100 showed nothing. So we just flip through, and then all of a sudden you'd hear a roar as we see a picture of some wildlife. So like a picture of a hyena would pick up and every yay, and so that's what we're seeing there. This is also a picture of a hyena, but unfortunately, if you look closely, it's a hyena that got snared in a snare trap, a wired trap. There are poachers everywhere. This hyena got into a snare trap, and you can see the wire is caught in the mouth and around the back of his head. Hyena, hopefully, they have such powerful jaws. Hopefully, he was able to release himself from the trap. We did actually get pictures of poachers, and we would turn those into the authorities. We also lost one camera to poachers. They must have seen it, cut it down, and took it with them. This is pretty exciting. This is the first photographic evidence of a lion in the Waza Marsh. Our team didn't catch this picture. This was the team before us. Pretty exciting to see a predator in the marsh. But our team got a picture of the same lion about 2 weeks later. So the lion is still there, and we're happy to see that. But again, this is the first photographic evidence of a lion in this area. So that's kind of neat to be blazing the trail. And there was some very interesting, wildlife. This is a caracal, beautiful cat. If you can see them, that's genets. Those there, down at the bottom of the screen, those are honey badgers, which we did a trip with Biospheres in Namibia, and we actually trapped honey badgers. They're kind of like wolverines, but they're pretty ferocious. They look cute, very ferocious. And here's a good shot of a spotted hyena. And elephants. And it's good to, again, to note where the wildlife is in the park, and that they're looking healthy. So camera traps was a lot of fun.
Oh, Peter, you're having trouble with your audio again, I think.
Oh, am I?
It sounds garbled at my end.
Oh, darn. Let me see if I can, boy, I'm not sure if I can get off of this mic. Let me.
We can't understand you.
Yeah, we can
Can you
understand.
hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I can't hear you now. Wait a minute, hold on. Hold on. Oop. No.
Battery 5.
While you're dealing with that, I wonder if Sue would be interested in turning her mic on and we could field a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Hey, Sue.
Hi.
Well, Tina was asking, how did you sign up for this trip? Like, where did you find out about it? What was the organization to give that information? That was from Tina.
Oh, okay. Biosphere Expedition. So I retired from teaching in 2013. And one of the first things was, what's the first trip you want to take? And mine was, I want to go to Africa. And so I started to think about it and went to the library, got books, but then I got one that was on volunteer vacations or volunteer opportunities. And that's where I found out about Biosphere Expeditions organization, which is started by a doctor, PhD in Germany, who started this enterprise to get people involved in citizen science. And so that's when we did the first trip to Namibia, and then we did the one to Germany, and then this one to Malawi. So, and I don't think it'll be our last, other than this one was probably one of the more rigorous as far as just, holy cow, was it hot. As you can see in this picture, we're all wearing, you know, the t-shirts and hair up, and yeah, but it's just a great organization.
Are you ready? Do you want to move on, or should we let Sue take another question while you're troubleshooting?
Peter, can you hear me?
Oh boy.
I can hear you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I hear you, Peter. But maybe you don't hear us. Wonder if he could join you on your computer.
I know.
I'm sorry here.
We hear you. We hear you, Peter.
He won't want to hear this, but I have the Mac, so that's why he's having all the trouble.
Oh, I hear him fine.
Thanks, Jan. Well, why don't we do another question, another little comment thing.
Hear me now?
Talk again.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just a little echoey, but we can hear you fine.
Okay. All right. I had to switch speakers there and mics. I don't know. So I'm going to try to get back on track here. Okay. And I think Sue was filling in the blanks a little bit. I couldn't hear.
Yeah, someone was asking about the organization that sponsored the trips, and so she graciously shared that information.
Okay, good. Thanks, Sue. Okay, so as I mentioned, as you saw, we did a number of projects throughout the day, throughout the week, gathering lots and lots of information and data, mostly on these data sheets. And all of that information, we just couldn't dump that onto the researchers. We then would enter it into laptops that were there so that the researchers could just look at the data, you know, and not have to deal with the collection of the data and all of the data input. So the work we're doing was very, very important for them and very interesting for us. And I'm kind of almost done here. You could see in 2018, there were 3 teams, and this is kind of all of the data that we collected, all of the various, you know, tasks that we did, and the species that we identified. 49 species were caught on the camera traps, 3 totally new species or new to that area. So, and the work continues. Reports have been written up, and you can go online and see reports on the research that was done as well, and it continues. So it's a fascinating way to travel, relatively inexpensive, we got to see Africa from a very unique perspective. We were given a lot of responsibility, and we got out in the bush in ways that the typical tourist wouldn't. It was a lot of work. As I said, 12-hour days. We were very, very tired at the end of the day. But I know both Sue and I, and we've made lifelong friends as a result of working side by side with people that we'd never met, but now we have kind of friends all over the world. And it was a unique experience there. So there's nothing like an African sunset. One reason is there's so much smoke in the air. After a long day in the field, we would have a beer and then cozy up and go to bed and get ready for another busy day. But a very fulfilling experience. I had thrown this presentation together for Audubon. They asked me to give this presentation. And although our research didn't involve birds, we did catalog, just for fun, the birds that we were seeing in the course of our travels and day. And there's some 300 species of birds in the Waza marsh. And birds in Africa, they're worth a trip to Africa just by themselves. I'm not a birder, but it's easy to become one if you're in Africa. The birds there are just fascinating and by the hundreds. So there's that. And then, there was always something going on in the background. Here we are just kind of sitting and relaxing a little bit. And then if you look, there's like a troop of baboon just horsing around. So always something on. Overall, the wildlife did look healthy. And I think I'll back up and I'll give you a little bit of a look at the camp here.
We do have a couple of questions for you too.
Let me just get the sound down on that. Here we go. There we go. That's quieter now. So again, that's the research camp. It was pretty concise, and we stayed to the boundaries of the camp. And then I'll leave you with a song. Can you hear it? That's it.
Wow, that was so cool. All right, well, we have someone here. Tina and her husband Martin have been to Africa and have been to Malawi. And they had, Tina, you had a couple of questions for him. Do you want to go ahead and you and Martin state your questions on your own, or do you want me to read them?
Sure. Oh, yeah, that's fine. I just was curious. We were in Malawi in the summertime, so I was curious what time, well, our summertime, I should say. We were there in August, so I was curious what time you were there.
Yeah. In Africa, they just have 2 seasons, wet and dry.
Yes.
We were there the September time frame, September going into October.
Okay.
And it was getting hot where we were. So yeah, we would take, like in the middle of the day, all the animals, everybody just kind of, goes away, finds some shade, and so did we. So in the middle of the day, we would, come back for lunch and not head out till about 3 in the afternoon. So it got kind of warm. And then after we were in Malawi, we went up to Zambia for a couple of weeks. And boy, I had never been so hot as then. But it was, yeah, I mean, we had to watch, hydration and all. But it was, it was okay. I mean, they plan it during this time because it is, it's dry. I mean, in the wet season, you can't get into the park at all, hardly. And the heat it was, I don't remember being over the top, overheated. The evenings were pleasant.
Tina, did you want to ask about the types of beans found in the poop?
Oh, that was my husband. So Martin, I don't know if you want to chime in. We had gotten some souvenirs of remnants of elephant poo.
I don't recall. I know Sue did. Sue did a lot. Are you on, Sue?
I'm on. So what we would do is, we'd separate out and try and classify the seeds that we found in the dung, and how many. And they had some examples of different seed pods from different trees there, like from an acacia tree. And so I would try and match it up to be able to identify the kinds of seeds that we were finding in the elephant poo. So it was interesting.
We learned the lions love to eat it as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we did a lion walk in Zambia, and they actually, they were juvenile. They're almost 2 years old, a brother and sister, and he picked up a chunk of elephant dung and put it up in a tree, like just a small little tree. And the female just grabbed it and just started chowing on it. And I guess it's really good for their digestive. So it's like kitties eating grass. Very fibrous, as you said.
Oh yeah, at the base, they're kitties.
Yep.
Jeff, did you want to ask any more about birds? You're on mute right now.
I think Peter answered that question with a slide. I'm just, because there's some very serious birders in our group who have traveled to places like Ghana or Ecuador to go to a certain place at a certain altitude on a mountaintop, looking for specific birds they add it to their bird list, their lifetime bird list. And I have to find out if they've been to that part of the world. Looks like there's a lot of birds there.
The birds are magnificent. The African gray crown cranes, and just that was a highlight.
So who was that we met from England? He was in Zambia?
Oh, yes. I don't remember his name, but he's like the head of a wildlife trust in England. We were doing a walking safari, and they were the only other couple with us, like a bigwig. He's like a big time birder. And he was, and that's why he was there. That was in Zambia.
Yeah, what are they, birds, the study of birds, ornithology.
Ornithology.
Yeah, and he was the head of the UK society, you know, I mean,
Ornithological Society.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, I mean, for bird watchers, and again, we're not birders, and when we eventually left Malawi and went to Zambia to, you know, go on safari, at times we would just say, we just want to go look at birds. You know, I mean, we've seen the lions, we've seen the, you know, impala and all that. I mean, we want to see birds because they're just fabulous.
Tricia, did you have a question? You look like you were going to maybe make a question, maybe not. I was just looking at you. Someone did ask, and this is kind of for Jeff, and we're about the recording and where they can see it if they want to see it again.
Yeah, we're still working on that. It occurred to me that we could create a YouTube channel. It might cost a little bit of money, but then we could have a place where everybody can go and watch videos as we accumulate more. But we hope to have it on the website in some fashion so people can access this. Also, I'll send a link to everybody afterwards. So you could, if somebody in your family missed it, they can still have a chance to watch it.
I see Martin nod and he's liking that idea.
And
Well,
anybody has any questions about Biosphere and our experience, and because definitely it's something to look into. We you know, we really enjoyed all three experiences and would recommend it as a way to travel, and it's worthwhile. You're doing real science, and it makes a difference. And you know, so thanks
Yes,
for
yes,
Steve for coming.
I could join in, and it's like, yeah, I do things like butterfly monitoring with the IBMN here in the Chicago area. But you know what you're doing on these trips, it's like it is genuine science. You are doing some great data collection. It was pretty impressive what they task you to do.
yeah, your photographs really told a beautiful story, and the things you chose to capture were tremendous. I love seeing, you know, the collection boxes with all the bugs and the stuff like that. You know, I mean, it really gave us a nice view of being there. Thank you. Well, any further questions for Sue or for Peter? And
I just want to say a huge thank you for sharing it. My husband is probably a little bit stressed now because I've been sending him links to all the trips I want to go do. And this is a little bit of a step up from our African trip, which was pretty much an overland tour. We call it one step up from hitchhiking. So those tents do look like palaces. So, this looks amazing though. I thank you.
Oh, and I would also recommend, if you're there in Malawi, to check out Kayak Africa. That's who we went with on Lake Malawi. Lake Malawi has the highest freshwater diversity of freshwater fishes in the world. It's where the aquarium fish come from. But it's part of the Rift Valley, which is why it's so deep. But it is, they have 2 camps on islands in Lake Malawi. We stayed at the more rustic of them, which I really liked. And then you rent kayaks. You can just go out during the day on your own. They can provide food for you. They have really nice tents. The other island is like a more shishi, upscale setup. But yeah, it was a nice add-on to the trip.
oh, thanks, Sue. And Martin is sharing a carving he got from Malawi there. That is very cool. Anything you want to tell us about that?
Martin, do you want to? I don't know if he's the other.
Yeah, I picked this guy up for about $30 from somebody who literally carved it. I carried this in a backpack for the rest of our trip through Zambia, Zimbabwe, into South Africa, London, Dublin, and then back to Chicago. And the only thing that happened was the base got cracked.
Oh my goodness.
It's just one of my favorite things that I actually have.
And we got a chessboard. We got there these guys carved, like this guy was already done, but we had a ton of beautiful work carved by some of the local people, and we ended up coming home with like no clothes because we just lived in like one outfit by like the final couple of weeks of our trip that we just washed because we collected things.
I know, I was noticing in the pictures there, I'm wearing the same shirt every day, but that's camping.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I was, so did you get that in Malawi?
Yes.
Because yes, I don't know if they were in Lilongwe there. They've got a road that has all these furniture and woodworking people that are selling their wares. And what it was is that the HIV has been so bad there, so high a rate of death from HIV, which is why there's so many orphans. And that the government eventually, as they started to get better control of the situation and decreasing the rate of deaths, but there were so many coffin carvers there, they had to start retraining them to do different types of woodwork. And so Coffin Row or Coffin Road is now a lot of furniture makers. But kind
interesting. Yeah, because that's actually where like we had some people on our trip that got beautiful carved like chairs and that like collapsed that had the big 5 on it. And we actually we stayed at a place called Conde Beach for a couple nights. But we all went into Lilongwe. And that's where some of the people did get some of the more beautifully carved pieces, which that makes a lot of sense now. It's very sad, like when you do see, I mean, like their clothing markets are often like we saw a lot of Chicago Bulls, so, you know, and like local T-shirts and things that people would donate, and they were like, you know, people were excited for the clothing. Yeah.
Before we sign off, I'm going to put you on the spot one more time. Martin, what towns are in York Township? What communities are in York Township?
York Township covers Villa Park, Lombard, slightly into Elmhurst, Oakbrook Terrace, Oakbrook, very small touches of Downers Grove, very small touch into Westmont, and very small area of Glen Ellen as well. So like where I'm running for is the Highway Commissioner, which basically covers the unincorporated roads. So most of those areas would be sort of York Center, Butterfield East.
Well, thank you. It's running for office is important these days, and we appreciate all of you who do that. And I just wanted to acknowledge you for that. Thank you. I think we're about done. I feel so enriched. We are so grateful. I love Trisha with her little clapping. I'm with you, Trisha. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you, you guys, so very much.
It's fun reliving it.
All right. Well, I hope we'll see you at our next program in March. And watch your newsletter. It'll be coming out the 1st of March and have more details in it. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, everybody. Be safe out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you,
Hey,
Peter.
Bonnie.
Thank you for sharing your adventures.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And your wife also. Your wife.
Yeah.
too.